Good morning, everybody. Welcome to BrightTalk at Big Data London. It's filling up very rapidly just now. What I want to do today is to introduce you to a panel session. I'll introduce my colleagues shortly. And the question that we're asking today is thinking digital, building a successful strategy for the data-driven enterprise. My name is Ross Simson. I'm head of data at Thames Water, and I have some colleagues here that I'm now going to introduce to you. Andy.
Hi Ross, my name's Andy Cotgreave. I'm technical evangelist at Tableau. I've been with Tableau for 7 years. I'm also the author of the big book of dashboards.
Very good.
Great
Welcome.
to be here. Thanks.
Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Thompson. I work at RBS. I head up the data innovation and AI team for the commercial and private banking. Been there for about 4 years.
Cool. And last but not least, Jason.
Hey Ross, I'm Jason Foster, founder and CEO at a data and analytics strategy consultancy called Cynozure.
Great. So I think what's really interesting about this panel, we've got Poacher Gamekeeper, because Jason now consultant, but was also at Marks and Spencer, so has got a retail background. We've got Claire, who's worked at the likes of Bradford and Bingley, Barclays, and also now at Royal Bank of Scotland. And then we've got Tableau software up there in that Gartner Magic Quadrant. So I think it's going to be an interesting and lively debate. And I think one of the questions that I'd like to start with is what weighting should we put on the following? So when we're looking at a data-driven enterprise and the strategy, what's more important, asking the right questions, building a clear strategy, or getting the right people using the right tools? Let's start, Jason.
So asking the right questions,
Yeah.
getting the right strategy,
Yeah.
having the right tools and people.
Yes.
I would put the heaviest weighting, well, for a start I think asking the right questions and having the right tools and people are underpinnings and part of your overall data strategy. But if we treat having a data strategy as its own entity, I think I'd put the most of the weighting on asking the right questions, because it's ultimately about achieving some sort of business outcome. And you get to that business outcome by asking the right questions, getting the right answers and driving some change. So I put most of the weighting on there. I put the next set of weighting on having a strategy, because you need to understand your people you need, the processes you need to go through, the technology you might need. So having a strategy which helps shape and define that, I think is the sort of the next weighting. And then tools, I would say, is the sort of the final piece for us, a really important enabler. It's only one sort of thing that you need in order to be successful at this stuff. So I would go ask the right questions, data strategy and tools.
Andy, different or same?
Well, I think you've got to start with a business question, but the risk there is if you're a high-level executive and thinking about your business question, you might be not serving the entire enterprise with all their infinite number of questions correctly, but you've got to start somewhere. So I think the question is the most important thing. Then I'm going to go people second,
Okay.
because you need to find people who can drive that change. And once you've got that in place, then you go and search for your tools and choose the best one for the job. But I think starting with a question, but recognizing that is just one of an infinite number of questions.
Okay.
That's the starting point.
And Claire?
So completely disagree again. It's very different.
Oh, that's going to be an interesting panel then.
So for me, I would put people at the heart of it.
Okay.
I think you need to make sure you've got the right people to help you define that strategy, which is probably what I would then do next. Make sure they're asking, defining what it is, the questions they want to answer, and then deciding what tools you actually want to help you do that. So I would put them in that order for me. That would be my...
And then leading on to that, then given that people's one of those important things, what's the characteristic that you look for most within your teams? Because you've set up an analytics group recently, haven't you?
Yeah, so actually the team that I'm running at the moment is newly formed. It's only started about a few months ago. We made a decision that actually we wanted to create a function focused on the AI side of things, and actually I've got a multidisciplinary team. It's not just the data science, which typically people associate with the AI. You need a broad range of skill sets to actually enable that delivery of it, whether it's data engineers, the business translators, the data translators. You need the system architects to actually, you can build the best model in the world, but if you can't put it into production, then it's no good. So it's actually a broad range of skill sets that you need to deliver.
So at the last interview, Jason, where you interviewed somebody, not the other way around, what was your killer question?
we're always looking for people that can be human, right? So yes, technology, yes, AI, yes, tools, yes, how do you knit it all together, yes, architecture, yes, implementation, all that sort of stuff. But the ability to be human in front of senior audience, in front of other technology people, in front of your analytics function, in front of externals, in front of the city, whatever it might be. I think being human is the most important element of all of those things, regardless of what team you're in. I don't know if there's a killer question to find out if someone's human. It's more about the interaction and the discussion and the debate and the behaviours that they show and the sort of style and the passion. But that's the most important thing when looking for people for me.
So one of the interesting things that we're doing at Thames at the moment is looking at what are the job descriptions that we need for and the roles going forward for the next 5 years. How did you choose your job title?
My job title? Well, I have a very specific job title. I am technical evangelist. This is a specific personal story. I used to be a Tableau customer 10 years ago. I was an analyst at the University of Oxford, discovered this tiny little piece of software. It didn't do very much, but what it did was better than anything else on the market by miles. But then the interesting thing was, I then ended up blogging and speaking and writing about it, discovering the world of communication and design. And I have this bizarre career background of, I was a journalist for a bit, I wanted to be an artist, I was a geographer, I was a business researcher. So eventually Tableau went, you're kind of quite enthusiastic, come and do this for us. So now I'm an evangelist, they pay me to evangelize, but it comes back to the question you just asked. I have a background in the human skills, and the talk I did here yesterday at Big Data London was all about, you can go for the technology, but unless people can communicate, unless they can take data to persuade others and drive change, then you're wasting your investment in data technology. So I'm totally with the human side of people skills.
Okay, so let's use that, given we're at Big Data London, let's use the data question. Jason, one of the questions I've got for you is, what do you find with your clients is the best approach for defining a data strategy?
So, having an approach for a data strategy is a good first step, because a lot of people don't, and a lot of organisations have found themselves in a place and then are going, oh my god, this isn't working, how do I need to solve it? A lot of people are focused on one element of a good data strategy, and often it's technology, like we're going to buy some tech and that will solve all our problems. Some people have just gone out and recruited some data scientists because that was what they read in the press they needed to do. So having an approach that says, we've got to get our act together, we've got to wrap our arms around what we're trying to achieve and go after it. And we find the best approach for that is to look at a data strategy in its broadest sense, and we tend to define a data strategy as like a framework that enables you to deliver the business value out of data analytics. And that gives you the sort of the flex and the agility to go on this journey, which is to put in all the building blocks you need to put in place to be awesome at this stuff. So starting up with the business strategy and filtering down from the business strategy in terms of what data assets do you need in order to satisfy the business strategy, and what opportunities and problems are you going after. And if we start with that as the lens, everything else falls under it. What technology we need to buy, what people do we need to put in place, what data do we worry about in terms of governance and master data, and then it sort of centers around delivering some sort of business outcome. So the approach for me is all about defining and shaping your data strategy in terms of your business strategy.
Okay.
I think that adds clarity to the difference between what comes first, because you said people, right?
Yes.
And I think a good strategy starts from saying the people we already have, let's start to define the questions and then find the people we need, right? But I wouldn't, because I think what you just said, Jason, is the worst thing to do is go, we need a data strategy, we'll hire a data scientist, and then they come and follow, they don't know the business.
Let's go and get a chief data scientist or chief data officer before I know what we're going to do.
Exactly. So I think the people internally maybe can start.
But it's getting the right people, because there's a different skill set. You need a different person to define the strategy compared to actually doing the work. So I'm definitely not advocating going out and getting a data scientist to do your strategy.
I thought
no.
Right.
It's that range of skill set, and I think it's one of those things that grow. So you're going to hire a certain, perhaps bring in certain individuals to define that strategy, and then you may well need more people as you go further down the line as well. Okay.
So if we've got a data strategy, let's say that's now in place,
That was easy.
and we're done, now we've got a roadmap that says these are our deliverables for the next 8 quarters. We've asked our asked our audience of our customers internally, what are the key questions that they want to answer? Top down or bottom up or both? Jason.
In terms of like the approach we take, well, I talk about it as being like a pincer movement. You definitely need at least a senior sponsor that is going to champion this data stuff. Someone at a senior level that is championing.
So how senior?
Certainly leadership team, hopefully board, but sometimes, depending on the structure and the setup of a company, the leadership team effectively runs the operation and that's good enough. But it needs to be top table. It does need to be sort of top table. So I definitely think you need that buy-in. You need someone who's going to champion it. You need people to get it, even if it's at a relatively sort of superficial or macro level to start with. But without and it's not quite bottom up, it's probably middle up and down. I think that's where you get the real change. That's where the rubber hits the road. It's where the change really happens. It's where the execution happens. It's where the real sort of action is taken. And you also need champions and cheerleaders and change agents, I often call them, in the troops, in the organisation to start making change, making it happen, and talking about this stuff up and down the organisation. So you can't be just top down or just bottom up. You need a bit of both.
All right. Same opinion or different?
Yeah, similar. Absolutely. I mean, we see it with hundreds of our customers or thousands of our customers where the C-level sponsor the investment, but then we feel that it's the people who are running the business day to day who have the really important business questions that the people at the top can't anticipate. So you have to get the tools in the hands of the people who have the questions. And when you scale that, right, so the CTO might sponsor a massive AI machine learning project, which is going to be flagship investment. Great. But if you could get 100 people saving $1 million or $100,000 each year, that scales massively, and each one of those people is empowered to bring about change, which really starts to coalesce the investment in data. So, yeah, pincer movement, top to bottom. Okay.
We need to remember that we've got an audience out there, and they've actually asked us a question. So the first one I'm going to post to you, Claire, if I may. You mentioned that you think people's really important, and one of the questions I guess the audience are asking is, okay, well, how might I get into data? So the question that's come in is, how much is social sciences important for data strategy?
It is really important to sort of understand, and I think a lot of the work that is going in today is quite a narrow focus in terms of what we're doing, and therefore I do think it's really important that we broaden that out to actually understand some more of the sort of psychology as to what's actually happening when we're actually doing some of those things. So for me, but I think it depends on the question as well in terms of actually getting into data. It's a question I get coming up a lot where people have a real interest. So my advice to them is there's a wealth of information actually out there on the internet, some really great free courses that you can actually take to actually pick up and start learning those skills that you're really interested in learning. So it's really expanded. It's very different from when I first started out in my career. There's so much sort of open source information out there now to be able to even just Google how you might go about doing that, and I'd go and have a look and see what's actually out there and start.
Okay. Jason?
I think it's pretty, so we talked about this earlier about it being a team sport and having a multifaceted team in place, but I also think that from an individual point of view it's quite good to be T-shaped. So depth in something.
Can you explain T-shape?
Yeah, so depth in, broad set of skills in data is really important. You need to understand and care about your data scientist, about how data arrives at you and how it's created, because there's a pipeline and things to do, and if you understand and recognise that work before you start building great tools and algorithms off the back of it, it's helpful for the sort of collaborative nature that this stuff tends to work in. So broad set of skills is important, the top of the T, but depth in something I think is also important. So some specialism in, and it could be on a spectrum in sort of data science and AI sort of work. It could be, you could have a specialism in data engineering, or you could have a specialism in research, or in building intelligent agents is your specialism. So I think that sort of broad spectrum of skills, but having a deep specialism and being known for something is going to be really important for particularly next-gen sort of data scientists in the space.
I think that also I've seen some of the best analysts that we've worked with actually come from the business who have that depth of knowledge and understanding about the systems, the processes and how it works, and then combining that with the technical skills as well. They make really great analysts.
Yeah, I think one of those sort of broad skills that's really important is business knowledge, business acumen and business subject matter expertise. So just being a tech specialist, and whether that's engineering or algorithm building, I think having a really clear understanding of what the business does, the supply, the sort of value chain of the business, and what the customer wants. Is you can't sort of sit in an island and start coding stuff. You've got to really understand it.
Yeah.
I think there's been some great books written about this recently. There's a great book by Fuzzy and the Techie by Scott Hartley, and he talks about the vital need for liberal arts degrees in social sciences in a world of increasing AI and machine learning, because people have to humanize the output and explain and interpret the output and talk to other human beings about what that means. They also need to check the algorithms. You know, we've seen countless examples where possibly too many engineers have focused in an engineering way on the training data and created, potentially racist, potentially sexist training models. So that's a vital place for social sciences to be involved. Nissan had to hire an anthropologist to work on human interfaces between driverless cars and human beings, because driverless cars, whoa, it's going to be great, but then actually there's an interface between human beings which is misunderstood. So that's another social science background. But I think the other aspect of that is tools are getting easier to use. These days, anybody can create a website. You don't need to know HTML to set up e-commerce, to set up advanced websites, right? The tools do the engineering for themselves, and increasingly analytics tools will be doing the same. Tableau, we're just launching Ask Data, NLP, allowing people to just type questions.
NLP?
Natural language processing, so they just type in a question like you would in Google, and then that goes and gets a result from your data. So you don't even need to know how to do the drag and drop features anymore, you just ask your data.
So then on that, let's start thinking maybe about the next 5 years. Are we going to ask Cortana or Alexa in the future and just be able to ask a question and say, what are my sales today as I wake up having my coffee in the morning? What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes? Yes?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Can't wait. You could do it. You could do it. I mean, it's not as you could do it now. It's not even 5 years. That's today possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, thinking about that, Claire, one of your roles is to think about the future, and I know it's all of your roles. But if we look at and think about, how do you see the data landscape changing over the next 5 years, and is machine learning and AI the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some of the highest valued companies in the world today are data-led organizations, and we're going to enter this era of hyper-personalization because of the sheer volume of data that we actually now have available to us. It's grown exponentially. It's going to continue to do that, and it's actually going to accelerate. And with that new data, there's new use cases, and you end up in a bit of a cycle as to how that begins to actually go round. And I think we are going to see AI be more prevalent. There's lots of companies that use AI today, but I think there's going to be much more of it as it becomes more easily accessible to lots of companies. And a lot of them are really poised already, but it's just making sure that you're ready and you understand what it can actually do for your organization, because with those, you can really transform the way that you actually operate. But ultimately, it's going to benefit all of the consumers that are actually using those services that the companies are offering.
Okay. Again, if anybody wants to ask questions, please do so on the internet as we go through. Jason, what would you say about that as well? AI is here. We're in a wave of AI where the compute power makes it possible this time. We've sort of had a number of goes over the last sort of 20, 30, 40 years. And compute power, cost of storage, all that stuff has been made it slightly challenging, and it's moving mainstream. So I think that's just going to continue. That's a fact. I think it's easy to get sort of carried away with the hype around it and get a bit of inertia. Oh my God, I should be doing AI now, and what's going to happen? And there's all this change happening in my industry, and of course you need to be bang on top of the opportunity that's in your industry or your role or your space about where AI can contribute, but not worry about it, not get stressed about it, not be concerned about it. And again, I'm sort of a bit of a broken record about this. It's like, don't look for problems that AI can solve, look for business challenges and look for the right tech solution or the right business solution or the right process change solution that supports the ability to do the business change that you need.
But I'm quite excited by this idea of sort of conversational UI where it's supported by AI, and I think that's this whole hidden AI. So instead of it being talking to a bit of software, it's just seamless. And I think that's the sort of the next wave that we'll see is making it sort of integrated with a lot, and it's there already in sort of ad tech and that sort of thing. But I think that's where I like to see things go. Is just sort of make it hidden, don't make it this sort of clunky interface that we have to engage with.
You walk around a conference like Big Data London, 90% of the vendors here are mentioning AI or machine learning in some way, and it is a big point of fear for organisations as we talk. How do you do a business data strategy? It's like, oh, you've got to do AI. It's like, well, actually, until you can even do that, as you say, Jason, you've got to have your data good quality right, and you've got to get your people in the right place. And that's actually just an analytics strategy before you can focus on the AI. And what we're trying to do at Tableau is augment analysts with exactly hiding the AI. When you use Google Maps, you're not thinking about all the machine learning that's underneath that. That's the brilliant thing. It's automating tedious tasks that I or you as an analyst don't want to do. I think that's what vendors are focused, or big vendors like us are focusing on now. And if you think you need to do AI, just get your data and your people in shape first, and then start bringing it in.
It's making sure you're targeting it at the right problems for me, because I agree. I think there's a whole range of stuff that you can do, whether it's visualization just of your data, making sure that the business has got the key, metrics that it needs to really drive the business forward, whether it's putting the data in place. I mean, it's all of it. It's not just AI. AI is a really small part of actually everything you need for the organisation.
Yeah. I agree. You need a lot of that in place, and we talk about helping companies get AI ready, and that's about putting those foundations in place, making sure you've got sort of data ecosystem and data platform and the right skills to do this stuff. But I don't think it's about waiting until you've done all those things to do AI, because I think there's an opportunity to go and test, learn, build some sort of minimum viable capability, try some stuff, try some different ways of working, give new opportunities and new routes, particularly in a sort of consumer-facing organisation, for how customers engage with you. But I think to do it at scale, in production, for real, I think you do need your building blocks in place. And I see a lot of organisations sort of going headlong into AI, building a thing in a sort of trial pilot way, and go, right, now we want to productionise. It's like, well, we haven't got our act together with how we're going to operate. Most importantly, we haven't thought about how this is going to impact the sort of the business from a cultural change point of view. And we're automating away jobs, or we're changing the way customers interact with us as a brand. Well, there's some change there. There's a new way of thinking about how we deal with service and proposition and operations.
So just before we do, because we're coming towards a close now.
Are we?
I know. So one of the things that at Thames Water we're very passionate about for our 15 million customers is providing them clean, safe water to drink at pressure, and making sure that we don't interrupt that supply. So we put customers at the heart of what we do. And I just really want to get into one specific question, which says, if you look at AI in any of the conferences that we've been to, they all talk about, the Arnie Schwarzenegger view of AI and Cybertron and all sorts of stuff like that. What role does ethics play within data, do you think, and should play going forward?
Well, it's important, as I alluded to before, there was the example of Google's AI. If you search gorilla, you were getting black faces. And that's clearly a big mistake. So we have to focus on that. That's partly where you need a more diverse group of individuals in your organisation to help spot that kind of thing. It's actually something that the UK government are investing quite heavily in. They're investing in starting an AI ethics centre. I think, as we look at what AI is happening, how AI is developing globally, US and China have got the lead on actual implementing the heavy load AI, but we at the UK are leaders in ethics. So I think the government are doing the right thing in focusing on that.
Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. Ethics is going to be really important. As you said, otherwise it can, if somebody's not monitoring how the algorithms and the machine learning is working, then you can end up with completely the wrong result, which is why it's so important to be constantly monitoring and not just let these things go off and do their own thing. The Arnold Schwarzenegger, we're not quite at that stage, I think, at this moment. The AI that we're all really talking about is very narrow because we're missing that emotional intelligence. So for me, that's why it's really important that you have that human element still involved in everything that you're doing to make sure that it's working in the way you intend.
Okay. Finally, Jason?
I think that it's our obligation to make sure ethics is embedded in how we think about AI, where we deploy it. There's some amazing challenges. This is, it's super disruptive. It's a massive game changer, and there's some brilliant problems we can solve: climate change, environment, society, and I think all those things lend themselves. They are ethical problems to solve. So we can use AI to solve ethical problems, but we need to be ethical about the way we approach AI, and not just deploy it for, just purely for commercial gain. In a way that interrupts and changes the way that consumers sort of and other businesses interact with each other. I think it's an absolute fundamental obligation of everyone in the data space to make sure that it underpins what we do.
Okay. So I guess closing now, thinking about the question that we asked at the beginning, which is building the successful strategy for the data-driven enterprise. I think what we've heard today from the experts is that have a clear plan. Ask the right questions, have the right people, do it in the right sequence, have a pincer movement, get somebody from the C-level who's responsible for your information and data, but also do that allow us to democratize the answering of the questions. As we move forward, it's going to move from people who can write the code, who can just ask the right question, and I think that's absolutely critical. What are the questions as a business that we want to answer? How are we going to do that? And how do we have a strategy and then the right people from whatever backgrounds around the data governance, the quality, the architecture tools, the platforms and the products that we produce, and make sure that we focus and link data to process, to governance, and to architecture. Thank you. Thank you, team.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ross.